Hi everyone. It is now Wednesday at 10 o'clock, not Thursday at 1:30. Tomorrow's Thanksgiving. Giving myself a break and a little vacation, so I'm doing all my work for the rest of the week today. And I have a very full day of meetings, so this was the only time that I could do this. So it is archived. You can catch it when you can, and we should be good to go. I'm going to begin with just a little bit of a statement. I am leaning heavily on Aviva Zornberg and her work in her book, The Beginning of Desire, for these Parshiot. I love Aviva Zornberg's nuance. I love her literary acumen. I love the way she looks, as we say, underneath and behind the words. I am, of course, adding my own layer, but I just want to recommend that if you like this kind of thinking, you might want to consider getting her books on the various Parshiot. There's one for each of the books of the Torah, and I believe there's one for Devarim. I'm not 100% sure about that, but I know for sure Bereshit, Shemot, Vayikra, and Bamidbar. And I just think, interestingly enough, the title of my talk this week for VaYeitzei is Holding Multiple and Conflicting Truths Simultaneously. And yes, you know me by now. It is informed by what's going on in the world and by my experiences and by my work in multi-faith circles and all of that. So I am drawn to her because she's not a black and white person. She does see the variegated shades of gray, and I think it's really important to do that to get the full-fledged impact of the text. I also want to say that I'm very involved in my multi-faith work these days. Some of it is extremely painful. I am starting a new group. So far, I believe there are 6 of us. We are Orthodox Jewish women, or traditionally observant Jewish women. Right now, it's all women. And we're starting with a small group, and it will grow, but who are holding multiple truths and conflicting truths simultaneously. If you've read my piece in the blogs of the Times of Israel by the same title, it will totally explain what we're doing. If you're interested in joining that group, and if you listen to these talks every week, please just send me a personal message on my Facebook page and your email, and I will get a hold of you. We're keeping this group small and very specific. It will grow, and it will interface with other things I'm doing along the way. So, we begin. Holding multiple and conflicting truths simultaneously. Many years ago, when I was just beginning my profession, I was teaching in an elementary Orthodox Jewish day school. When we were learning about the family of Yitzchak, Rivka, Yaakov, and Esau, I wanted to convey how the same family to which everyone belongs may, and often does, look very differently to each of the members given their experiences. We did a progressive improv called Mishpachat Yitzchak Goes to the Family Therapist. This was a 2nd grade class. I learned 2 important things during this activity after we had actually studied the text. First, I learned that half of the kids' families must have been in family therapy for one reason or another because they knew exactly what to do. And secondly, I learned that they knew at this young age about discord and conflict, and each was convinced that they were correct and thus the unfairly wronged party. Unfortunately, as we grow up, not much of that changes for too many people. These factors are permanent fixtures in our life, whether we like it or not. This is true within our own Jewish world, and it is equally true as we continue to try to figure out how to live with others who have different backstories. In our Torah portion of VaYeitzei, we saw it begin in Toldot, and now we're going to see it here. We see all of this playing out in Yaakov's life, as well as a bit of an insight into Esau's experience, as we will continue in the Torah next week. As each of the brothers maneuvers through their own narrative and moves further and further away from their rooted discord, we must also ask how they move inward toward a better understanding of self. In doing so, do they see themselves in the other and the other in themselves, as Aviva Zornberg does suggest? Notice that some see that Yaakov is still the trickster, so to speak, and has met his match in Lavan in our Parsha. Though again, as these individuals with different stories and personal temperaments come together, notice that they will each bring in their emotional and psychological as well as experiential baggage. We begin with chapter 31, verse 24. Vayavo Elokim el Lavan harami b'chalom halayla, vayomer lo hishamer lecha pen titaber im Yaakov mitov ad ra. First of all, we have a dream here, and we're going to see lots of dreams. And we are going to ask the question as we move along in Bereshit, especially in Parshat Miketz in several weeks, what is the truth in these dreams? What is the voice that's speaking in these dreams? Are we sure about the identity? Is it obtuse for a reason? What is being conveyed in this quasi-real experience? So God comes to Lavan, the Aramean, in a dream of the night and says to him, "Beware, lest you speak with Yaakov, good or evil." Lavan then overtakes VaYeitzei Lavan at Yaakov. Yaakov pitches his tent on the mountain. He's running from him. And Lavan pitches with his kinsmen on Mount Gilead. And Lavan says to Yaakov, "What have you done that you concealed me? And that you did not let me know that you led my daughters away like prisoners of war?" And I want to convey that it says v'tignov in Hebrew, which is not concealed. It's actually stolen. You've stolen something from me. You have driven my daughters kishru out cheret, like prisoners of war. Unfortunately, we understand that today all too clearly. We cannot ignore the language and the accusation contained here. In Lavan's eyes, as the head of his patriarchal world, in his tribal and limited context, Yaakov continues to try to undo him, marry his younger daughter before his older daughter, here stealing, subjugating his daughters, taking them away from his father to another land. Remember this when we justify the actions of some with whom we agree, while being way too quick to condemn the actions of another with whom we may disagree. He says, Lavan, still talking, Lama nitbalta livroach? Why did you flee secretly? Why did you steal from me? Why did you conceal what you were doing for me? Which many translations use that because we don't want Yaakov to look like a thief. Keep that in mind. I would have sent you away with joy, with songs, b'simcha, b'shirim, b'tof, or b'kinor, with a drum, with a harp, with celebration. So my question is, what do you have? It's easy to say what he would have done because it's after the fact. Some will be quick to say, no way. And others will say, he should have been given the chance. Look at how quick and how, I'm going to use a very strange phrase, perilously neat. We try to define sides. Who's all wrong? Who's all right? And yet the truth is not on either end of what I call the boxing ring. His two daughters are righteous people, and this was the family from whom Yaakov was meant to take his wife, or wives, to be more accurate. And he says he continues, Lavan continues, you did not allow me to kiss my children goodbye. Now you've acted foolishly. And he says, Ata hiskalta asu. Now, these things that you have done, you've acted foolishly. I want to point out that the letters Ayin, Sin, Vav are the same letters that we use to spell Esau? And is there a hint of the identity of Esau here in Lavan's sanction or critique of Yaakov? He says, I have the power to inflict harm upon you, but the God of your father, so this isn't you, Elokei Avichem, the God of your father, spoke to me last night, saying, in his dream, right? Beware, Yishamer lecha medaber im Yaakov mitov ad ra. Beware when you speak with Yaakov, good or bad. But now you've gone away. You've longed for your father's house. But why have you stolen my gods? Lama ganafta et Elohai. Why have you stolen my gods? And Yaakov replies and says to him, because I was afraid. Because I said, lest you steal your daughters from me. So remember, they've both not acted honorably with each other. They both had their reasons. Who began? Anybody who's a parent of kids, he started it. No, she started it. No, they started it. I mean, go try to figure it out. So, at this point, let's think objectively for a moment, if we can. Do we have any sympathy or understanding for Lavan's truth here? The case could be made that they've each stolen, same word used, gimel, nun, vet, from the other. They've stolen time. In the case of Lavan from Yaakov, they've stolen and a beloved wife, and they've stolen everything from Lavan's perspective. Yaakov is taking his family. Yaakov is not. Remember that sweet little Yoshev Ohalim, the sweet little dweller in the tent? No. He's playing on this field of deception and defense. Each knows they're right. So what do we do in that situation? How do we negotiate it? How do we find a solution or a resolution or even a detente? Anything. So we will continue with Yaakov's perspective now. We've heard from Laban. Now let's go to Yaakov. I was in the field by day when the heat consumed me, in the frost at night my sleep wandered from me. This is 20 years I've spent in your house. Zeli asrim shana bebetecha avadticha. I worked arba esrei shana, 14 years, bishtei benotecha, for your 2 daughters, v'shesh shanim betzonecha, and 6 more years for your animals. And you changed my wages, v'tachalaf et mishkarti, 10 times. Had not the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Yaakov been for me? In other words, had God not said to you, beware? Certainly you would have sent me away empty-handed. God has seen my affliction and the toil of my hands. And that, vayukachamash, that was why God reproved you last night in your dream. Yaakov is saying, no! You would not have celebrated my leaving. I'm only leaving because of God, not you. Now remember that theme. It's God that tells Avram to leave. It's God that provides the sacrifice for Avram in the Akeda. It's God that's telling Yaakov to leave now, and we're going to see the same thing with Yosef and the drama that will unfold in Mitzrayim later. At this point, Yaakov and his family leaves, and he sees this as a fulfillment of the initial experience from earlier in the Parsha. We're going backwards now, chapter 28, verse 15. V'hinei anochi imach. And behold, I am with you, God says to Yaakov. I will guard you wherever you go. Ushmarticha b'chol asher telech. I will restore you to this land, v'hashivoticha el adama azot. I will not forsake you until I have done what I said I would do concerning you. Viva Zornberg wants us to understand an important and fundamental truth from this beginning text. Yaakov will set up the stones to sleep, and watch what happens. VaYeitzei, Yaakov, mi Be'ersheva v'yelech Harana. He leaves Beersheba, he goes to Haran, a lot of goings and comings here. He arrives at the place, he lodges there because the sun had set, he took some of the stones of the place, Vayikach ma'avnei hamakom, stones, plural, and he places them at his head and he lays down. Another dream, B'chalom, and he dreams. And here there's this ladder, it's set up, it goes up and down, angels were descending and ascending, we know this part of the story. And behold, God was standing there, Hashem Nitzav, and Nitzav, we've talked about this, and it comes up specifically at the end of Devarim, is a very specific word. It doesn't mean Omed, like I'm standing for a minute, I'm sitting, like Simon says, Tamod, Teshev. It's Nitzav. You're situated. Matzav is a situation in Hebrew. And God stands there at attention, if you will. And God says, Ani Hashem Elokei Abraham Avicha ve'Elokei Yitzchak ha'aretz asher ata shochem aleha lecha etnena ulezarecha. I am the God of Abraham, your father, and the God of Isaac, and the land on which you were lying, I will give it to you and to your seed. And your seed will be as the dust of the earth, and you will gain strength westward and eastward, and northward and southward, and you shall be blessed by all the families of the earth throughout your generations. Behold, I'm with you. I will guard you wherever you go. I will restore you to this land. I will not forsake you until I've done what I have spoken. And Yaakov wakes up from his sleep, and he says, for sure God was in this place, and I didn't even know it. And he was frightened, and he says, how awesome is this place? There is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate of the heaven. And here we go. Vayishkam Yaakov baboker vayikach et ha'even, singular. The one stone. He took the one stone that was at his head, and he set it up as a monument and poured oil. Now remember, there were stones, and now there's one. So how did the stones become one stone? Remember, there's no mistakes in our text. Rather, Aviva Zornberg sees this as an important object lesson for this fusing or confusing of personalities, not seeing us as distinct and separate entities, but somehow connected with each other and interlocked with each other for all kinds of reasons. So I'm now going to share with you Aviva's teaching. It's called Fusing the Stones, an experiment in integration. The night of sleep in a holy place then becomes an experiment in integration. Before sleeping, with a deliberateness that the Midrash takes as experimental, Yaakov takes me'avnei hamakom, from the stones of that place. He places them, otam, at his head, and he lays down. He then, in the Midrash, we're taught that there are 12 stones representing the 12 tribes. And Yaakov says, Abraham did not raise up 12 tribes, nor did Isaac, Yitzchak, but if these 12 stones unite with one another, I will know that I will raise up 12 tribes to be one people. The stones unite with each other. Yaakov wakes in the morning, and he takes ha'even, the stone. The fusing of the stones into one is almost surrealistic image for Yaakov's central preoccupation. Stones do not fuse. They stubbornly, stonily, I love when she does this, preserve their separateness. The enterprise of raising 12 tribes seems similarly incapable of producing unity or harmony. Think about that. The enterprise of raising 12 tribes seems similarly incapable of producing unity or harmony. It's fraught from the beginning, folks. Aviva continues. This impossible task of creating structure and meaning in the diverse and the chaotic is, however, the essentially human act. In a fine paradoxical sense, the human being, as human being, should be able to raise up 12 tribes simply as the creature formed by the hands of God and endowed with the unpredictable creativity of God. To raise up 12 tribes It's a given to engage with chaos, with the indeterminate and the diverse, and to create harmony, a wholeness out of difference. I love Jonathan Sacks's point that he would often make. We create holy spaces by making room for difference. Think about that. It's such an important concept. She continues, Adam was fit to have 12 tribes rise up from him, as it is written. This is the book of the children of Adam, chapter 5, verse 1 of Parshiot. Zeh, Zion, Hey, 7 and 5, has the numerical value of 12. We see a lot of this gematria in the Midrash. 12 should be the number of the progeny of Adam. God said, Adam is the work of my hands. Should I not give him 12 tribes? But then I gave him 2 sons, and look what happened. If I'd given him 12, how much worse it would have been. Therefore it is written, not Adam. I will not give these 12 to Adam. I'm going to give them to Yaakov. Yaakov HaTzadik. This is from Kohelet Rabbah, chapter 3, verse 14. In the Haftarah that goes with our Parsha, which is from the book of Hosea, we see another object lesson. That is, Hosea is to learn about unfaithfulness and discord, forgiveness, and whatever reconciliation we can reach through his own experience with his wife and children. Again, discord, chaos, everybody running in different directions. How do we create unity out of that? How do we create destiny out of that? How do we create shared history and narrative out of that? It should be pointed out that the Ashkenazim and Sephardim read different portions of Hosea for this particular parsha. In this part of our Haftarah, chapter 12, read by Sephardim and some Ashkenazim, we learn how the stones in our lives remain separate, so to speak, though we may want to continue to look for and strive for some unity. We begin. Chapter 12, verse 1. Ephraim has surrounded me with lies, and the house of Israel with deceit. But Judah still rules with God, and with the Holy One, Judah is faithful. Ephraim, you will recall, is one of Yosef's sons. These sons spent their formative years in Mitzrayim, surrounded by other people and narratives and their ways. He is one more generation removed from Yaakov, whereas Yehuda is his son. But remember, Yehuda acts inappropriately with Tamar, so he too is flawed and has a problematic narrative. The Haftarah continues. Ephraim joins the wind and chases the east wind. All day he increases deceit and plunder, and they make a treaty with Assyria, and oil is brought to Egypt. Now the Lord has a contention with Yehuda, to visit upon Yaakov according to his ways, according to his deeds he shall recompense him. In the womb, Yaakov seized his brother's heel, and with his strength he strove with an angel. He strove with an angel and prevailed. He wept and beseeched him. Now the Lord of God of hosts, the Lord is his name, and you will return by God, keeping loving kindness and justice and hope to your God always. These are children. These are the offspring of Yaakov, raised in his home, and about whose births we read in this parsha. What we see here is not one easily unified whole, but rather different personalities and different perspectives. Hosea will prophesize about what will happen, and then will have his own experience, his object lesson with his wife Gomer and their children, all of whom have their own narrative and their own way of viewing that particular family. Not significantly different than Mishpachat Yitzchak at the family therapist. And here is a truism. We each all have our own experiences, our own narrative, our own pains, our own reactions, our own trauma. No one, but no one, gets to look at another person and say, my trauma is real, yours is not. If we could remember this And as my Muslim friend Nora from Saudi Arabia says, if you have questions or if you disagree, ask me. Don't assume and don't attack. Maybe we could move from this horrible quicksand in which we all find ourselves to some place where we acknowledge each other, each one's truths and black stories, holding on to our own, and then figuring out how to negotiate the messy lane in between them all. So, Yaakov is cited not for his perfection, for he was indeed not perfect. He was not fused into one simplistic, complete whole. Only God can do that, as we learn from Ramchal, Moshe Chaim Latzato. And in fact, this fused whole that God is, this completeness, this shlemut, is only God's. We as human beings have to, as Jonathan Sacks says, make space for differences. That is the only way we will achieve what we need to do in our world. We need to come to recognize the reality of living with desperate parts. We need to recognize that each person has their narrative, their history, their hurts, their pains, and we cannot dismiss them. We will see the maintaining of these disparate individuals when we come to the end of Breshit, when Yaakov does bestow the blessings on each of his 12 sons. It will not be a unified blessing. It will be different. And some of them will feel as negative as some of the words we just read from the Haftarah. Each blessing will represent not just the qualities that we hope for or we aspire to, but also the disparity and the discord that is unavoidable as part of the whole of Yaakov's family. This was his reality. This is always the reality. And this is our reality today. As Thanksgiving comes upon us, and we all do our own traditions of observing or celebrating or not, let us be thankful and let us appreciate our own completeness and incompleteness. And remember to listen to the other, share with the other, and consider the pain that the other one feels. Don't collapse everybody into they and us. And don't fall into the trap that the prophets, and we hear in the Torah as well often, eyes have they, but they see not, ears have they, but they hear not. Let us listen to each other, let us see each other, let us speak with each other, let us heal each other, let us unite with each other, and try to achieve whatever fusing we can while maintaining our own identity as do stones. Shabbat Shalom.